Hi and welcome back on my channel to this brand new video. Now, as the title suggests, today we take a look at the MDT Visu Control Server 2. So the visualization MDT is offering for the KNX system. And this visualization server is quite unique in its configuration and in its setup. But before we take a look at it, let us first of all take a look at the functions this visualization server supports. So basically the MDT Visu Control Server is available for Android and iOS. So it's definitely only a solution for mobile devices or tablets. You don't have any Windows application that you can use, which I think is a little bit of a shame. But besides that, it's a really good application for your smartphone. And then the visualization, in my opinion, is pretty straightforward. So in here I'm in a little demo application MDT is offering, so you can simply download the app onto your device and also use this demo application. And here you can already see the different functions this visualization supports and how it's set up. So if we take a look at it, we have some binary informations, for example for windows and door contacts, central functions, etc. and also the weather station. So for example, if I click here on the kitchen, we can see all the lights in the kitchen, the blinds, room temperature control. We also have multimedia control that you can use and again some status informations. Besides this room view here, you can also do the following. You can go, for example, in the living room and then click beside the light icon here on these three bars. And then you can see all the lights in the whole installation, and now they are grouped by every room. And so that's basically how this visualization is configured. I really would emphasize you to take a look at it on your own device. So that's basically how the visualization looks like, and there you can also see the functions this visualization server supports, which we will also see in the configuration. The hardware itself is also pretty straightforward, as you can see here. It has a width of 2 circuit breakers and it only needs to be connected to KNX and to your internet connection. So the power supply is also being done via KNX, and the connection to KNX is not via KNX IP but directly to your KNX twisted pair system. So that's everything you need to know about the hardware. Maybe you have seen it. On the left hand side of the device there is a QR code, and that's because the visualization server also supports KNX Data Secure, which I think is a really good addition to it. And now let's come to the, let's say, uniqueness of the device, because most of the visualization servers I personally know are configured with an additional software or via a web interface, etc. But here, this visualization server is directly configured via the EDS, so you don't need any additional software. And it's already directly documented within the EDS. And that's pretty unique, because the only other server that does it the same way I personally know is from Weinzierl, the BAOS 777. So basically it's a normal KNX device that you will then configure in the EDS, and I would say we no longer talk about the configuration, but we will actually do it, and therefore I will switch over to the EDS. So I have the Visu Control object server already installed in my KNX installation, and I have already integrated into my KNX project, which you can see here. And so what we see is already some default objects, like for example we can use the server as a time and date server for our KNX installation, so to show the time and the date on push buttons, displays, etc. And we see some additional diagnostic objects. And besides that, let us jump into the parameters to see how we can set it up, because the special thing is that we set up the visualization directly in the EDS. So therefore, let us first of all start with some general settings. Here you can see, for example, the language for the email content that the device can send, some additional password settings. Besides that, that's already it. However, here we can also enable webcams that we want to show in our visualization, and we can also configure the refresh rate. So here we simply enter the URL and the refresh rate. However, in my case, I don't have a webcam that I can use therefore. And so let us take a look into the next setting, and this is already something regarding the visualization itself. Because here we can see the areas that are already pre-configured for the visualization. So here you can see the names of it and the name in the application. So here, for example, we have the area living room, and in the visualization it is written also down as living room. So here we could also specify an additional name or our own name for this room, for example, not living room but TV room or something else. So that's basically everything that we need to know about the areas. Here down below you also have space for some additional areas that you can use. Then we have the function types. So the visualization works on this way that we have predefined function types that we can use. So for example, for switching, light control, color control, and so on and so forth. And so here you can already see the corresponding icon and the name on how it will be seen within the visualization. And also here you have up to 5 custom types that you can configure. Then we can enable or disable the weather data. So if you have an external weather station in KNX, you can also show this data in here. In my case, I have it, and so therefore I'll activate it and quickly rename it to weather. Then we have some settings regarding the web interface and the time and date. So how often should it be sent to KNX? Now I think 24 hours is fully sufficient. And that's basically everything that we need to set up in the general settings, and now we can directly jump into configuring the visualization itself. And this happens via those functions here. So here you have up to 200 functions that you can configure, and to make it a little bit more easy to navigate through, each functions are grouped in a block of 10. So here you can see you have the first 10 functions which you can activate individually, and you can give this group also a name. Now this name won't be seen within the visualization, it's just for the configuration in the EDS to more quickly find the correct function. So I would go ahead and use, for example, each block for a dedicated room. So even if I only have, for example, 4 functions for a room, I wouldn't use the additional functions for the next room. Instead, I would really stick to those blocks of 10. Now obviously you can do it the way you like to do it. So I will name this block living room and then activate the first 3 or 4 functions. Now with that we can directly jump into configuring this function. So first of all it needs a name. In my case I want to configure it for a ceiling light, a simple switchable light. We can configure the area it corresponds to, so living room is already correct. Besides that, we can configure whether this information should be seen on the home page. We can also configure for which user it is available. So we have 2 user groups, the admin user and the user, or however you want to call it. So the administrator and the normal user. And that's basically all you need to configure up here. And besides that, here we can now configure the function type. So for example, in my case, I have a switchable light, so I could use this type 1 here, or I could go ahead and use the type 2 light, function selection, light on off, and here I can then say how it should be presented in the visualization. So 2 buttons, 1 button as a toggle, or 1 button as a specific value that should be sent. In my case here I stick to 2 buttons, and I can then also configure a specific icon, for example the ceiling light, and with that this function is already configured. Now these icons here can't be exchanged with your own icons, those are already pre-configured. Maybe you have asked yourself what this function here does. Well, that basically says that later on when we go into the visualization you will see that every function is not only grouped by the room but also by the function type. So you will also have group of all your light functions. And what you could do is that you could go ahead, configure a function as a dedicated function, but sort it into another function group. That's basically what this does here. But I won't use it here in this case. Now besides that, I also have a dimmable light, which I quickly configure, so also type as light, and now here in this case it's dimming. And here I want to have it as a slider. Then we have an ambient light as RGB, and so therefore in this case I don't want to use a type 2 but instead a type 3 color control. And here we can now specify what kind of object we need. In my case I need a combined object, so I configure it to that. And now there you can see this might be something where you want to set the sorting to extended, and instead of using this color control group, you could group it into the normal light group. That's basically the way on how you can use this setting up here. And then I also have a window shutter, so I will simply call it window and use the type blinds/shutter. And here you can specify if you only want to see buttons, if you also want to see the height, and if you have blinds you can also see the slat position. In my case I only want the height position as a slider. And so that's basically how you would go ahead and set up your visualization. So you can see that now in the group objects I have all the objects that I need. I will quickly hook it up to my group addresses, and then we'll take a look at how this will look like in the visualization. By the way, if you want to know more about KNX, then you could check out my video courses over on Udemy. There I have a dedicated video course on the topic of KNX and also KNX and Home Assistant. And so there we really start at the beginning. So for example, in the KNX course we will see some informations about the theory, which devices exist, how they are set up, what you need to know when you plan your KNX installation before we dive deep into the EDS, or for example in KNX and Home Assistant we take a look at all the entities that can be created, how you can use it for automations and also for the visualization. And you would also really support me and the work I do on this YouTube channel. I have linked you both video courses down below in the video description with some additional coupon codes with which you can save a little bit of money. So would be really great to welcome you in one of those courses. So I have now downloaded everything onto the visualization, and as you can already see I'm here in the app on my Android smartphone, and here you can see the local servers. It already found the correct server within my installation, and so therefore I can click it. And here now I need to select my role. In my case I want to use it as the administrator, and therefore I need to enter now the administrator password. Click on OK, and now you can see that we are actually connected, and we can already see the weather data which comes from my weather station. Now besides that we don't see anything here at the home screen, but if I head over into the rooms we can see that here we have the living room. If I click on it, then we can see all the objects that we just created. So from here I can turn on and turn off my ceiling light. I can control the spots, so turn it completely on, so turn it completely off for example, or I can also turn it completely on. Then we have the ambient light. Now here in my case I haven't connected it currently, but what you could do is that you could turn it on, and then in here you could specify the correct color. Now here I think it would be really cool if you would have the option to set some favorite colors, for example. However, this isn't possible, and as you can see, it's a little bit buggy because in my case I don't have a light currently connected to it. And down below here we can see the slider for my window. And so that's basically how the visualization will look like on my smartphone. So as you can see here we have the living room with our objects, and those objects are already grouped in their traits. So here we have the light, the RGB and the blinds and shutter. And if I go ahead and click here on this symbol right beside it, we can see that now we are in a window where we only see all the lights that we have, and in here those will be grouped by their room. So here we can see all the lights from the living room. If I would have another room, we would see it down below. Now what we can't do from within here is we can't add objects onto our home page. So from here we can't configure the ceiling light to be visible on the home screen. This is really something that we need to specify beforehand in the parameterization in the EDS. However, what we can do is that we can specify how the objects are sorted within this page. So what I can do is that I can head over into settings, then go into settings, and in here I can click on sorting of functions, and there you can see that here I have all my pages that I currently have. So I go into rooms, and here we have our living room, and here now I can go ahead and, for example, say I don't want the spots to be in the bottom, instead I want to have the spots above the ceiling light. I can go ahead and, for example, also grab the RGB light to be on top, or also the, for example, blinds and shutter. Then I can go ahead, save it, and with that, if I now go ahead into the living room, you can see my new sorting that I just set up. So this is really something that's quite useful, and this is individually per user. So each user can set up this sorting. So let us head over back to the parameterization, because there are still some things missing. Because if I scroll a little bit further, you can see that we not only have 200 functions, but we also have, for example, the status logic, diagrams, and also the email function. If I go ahead into the status logic, here what we can do is that we can activate 10 of such logics. And if I head into this status logic, that's basically a combination of multiple binary inputs that we can either group with the AND or NAND or NOR configuration. So what is that useful for? Well, for example, if you have window contacts and you want to see if there is still a window open in your home, then you would usually need to have an additional logic server where you parameterize this logic, so where you have this OR logic. However, in this case, you can simply go ahead and use the status logic in here, configure it to OR, and then you can go ahead and configure here all your binary sensors. So before, you would go ahead and configure all those Windows contacts as their own function, and then you can set up the object number, so the number that is set up here. So I'll quickly do it. So for example, I go ahead into the function 191, configure it as window contact 1. So type in this case is a status, and here we should already have an information. So here open close door, but I want to have it open close window, so also with the correct symbol. And let's also add another one. So window contact 2. Configure it to status. Then here to open close window. And now what you will see is that here we have the number 1256 and 1262, and that's basically the number that you need to enter within this logic here. So 1252 and 1266 was it? No, 62. So 1256 and 1262. And that's basically how you can set it up. And in here I can now name it, for example, all Windows closed. And this will then be visible from within an area, or I don't use any allocation, but I want to have it visible in the home page. So that's how I would configure it. And besides that, there are also 8 diagrams that we can enable. So if I activate it and go into the configuration of it, the procedure basically is the same like for all functions. Here we specify to which room it is allocated, in my case no room. So I want to have it visible on the home page, and then we can specify which data point type we want to log. So in my case, I want to log the temperature, And so therefore this is a DPT9, so 2-byte floating point in degrees Celsius. And here we can say the recording interval. And with the recording interval, you specify how often the value should be saved. And then you can see how long those values will be saved. So here you can set it up. So for example, that every 5 minutes this value is getting saved. And so this will last up to 10 days. If the 10 days are reached, then the oldest value will be deleted. And here, for example, you can also configure some additional options like at the current day every 5 minutes, and then so the last days, then the values will get deleted so that you only have a value every 60 minutes. That's, for example, also here a setting that you can do. So in this case, I'll set it to 5 minutes, and then I can specify if I want to have it as a line diagram or a bar diagram. So basically if I have a measured value or a meter reading. So in my case here, outside temperature. And I go ahead and quickly add this group object to my temperature outdoor group address. And then, last but not least, you also have email functions available. And this works on the following way. You have up to 30 status elements, which are basically either binary values, 2-byte values, etc. So those are status elements that you can configure. And then it's not the case that on every change an email will be sent, but you can then specify up to 3 different status reports. And in this status report, you can then say how often should this email being sent. And in this email, you will then see the value of those status elements. I hope it got clear what I mean with that. So here you can say, for example, on a fixed day in the week, in the month, or for example, via a dedicated KNX group object. So what this could be, for example, useful for if you set it to a fixed date in the month on the first day or on the last day in the month, that you go ahead and in here in the status elements you enable those for the meter readings, so that at the last day of the month you will receive an email with the current meter readings if you have them available in KNX. This is, for example, what I would use them for. Besides that, you also have alarm objects, and those now work on the way that when this object is triggered, an email is directly sent. So those are not for the status report, but they are really a dedicated email that will get sent. So here we can activate it and can then send a specific text. So I will quickly use it now here with a 1-bit object. And that's also available really with a 40-byte object. And this 40-byte telegram is then being sent as an email. And you could also go ahead and collect multiple telegrams together if they are within a certain time span, and those then will get sent as one text message. So I will quickly hook those new objects up to group addresses, and then we will take a look at it in the visualization. Now if we take a look at the visualization now in the app, we can now see that on the first panel here we see the window option. So if I go ahead and open the window, I will quickly do it via the EDS. You can see that now all windows are closed is here with a green symbol. Now here obviously the logic seems to be a little bit broken, because in this case it would mean that the windows are not closed because 1 is sending the value 1, which means that the window is currently open. However, if I now go ahead and write the value off, then we see that the screen symbol here is off. So down below here we can see the diagrams. If I click here on show, we can see the diagram of the outside temperature. So here you can see that at the time 14:30 we can see the temperature was at 27.2 degrees. And now this would obviously will be a line chart if new values are being sent to this group address. And so that's basically how the Visu Control Server from MDT works. So let's come to a summary. What's my opinion on the Visu Control Server? Now I think it's a really great addition as a simple visualization server. Obviously, this isn't meant to be a full visualization where you can create your own themes, your own pages, etc. But instead, it's really a visualization that it's meant to be set up quickly from within the ETS. And this is really something that you have to bear in mind. So as a system integrator, that's pretty handy because you don't need any new software or something else. Obviously, the configuration of it, I think it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. It's not overloaded with functions and pretty straightforward to configure. However, there are some things I think are missing for this visualization server, which I would really like to see in a future update, for example. What I think is missing in this server is first of all a solution for time switching. Because at the moment you are not able to set up time switching from within the visualization server. Because at the moment you need an additional MDT KNX time switch. This KNX time switch then has the option to be combined via a dedicated object to this visualization server, and with that you are then able to set up your own timers. However, I would really wish that this function would be implemented into the visualization server directly, so that I don't need any additional hardware, etc. Because in my opinion, that's really a fundamental function of a visualization server. Because with the additional hardware, you not only need an additional hardware, but this time switch can only be configured via the ETS and not from the end user. So there I really would like to have a solution for the end user, so that the user is capable of creating time switches how he likes for the functions he wants to have, etc. Because that's really something that you can't predict where the user wants to have time switches, etc. So that's the one thing. The other thing is that I really would like to have a sort of a remote access to the server. Obviously, this server is meant to be a simple solution, and that's also where the price tag is at. But I would really like to have an optional solution for remote access. At the moment, the only option you have is to use a VPN access to get access to the visualization from remote. Now, of course, this works completely fine. However, I would have liked to have a simpler solution to that. But that's basically all the complaints that I have. And you really have to admire MDT here, because in the last video that I did about this device on my German YouTube channel, it wasn't possible to sort the functions on the visualization pages. That was just something that was added with an update. So MDT is really listening here to its users, which I think is pretty good. So that's my summary to this device, or my thoughts about it. Now I would be really interested to know what you think about the Visu Control Server. Have you used it? Do you think it's a great solution, or do you miss something? Write it down in the comment section below. Would be really great to hear your thoughts about that. Now with that, I would say that's it for this video. If this video was helpful for you, then consider a like to this video. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any new videos. And with that, I would say I see you in the next video. Bye bye.